ways that
Recording in
Joann's
progress.
art has filled the world. So I'm not going to talk about that so much as I want to lift up a particular aspect of Joann's art, which is the unique gift of seeing and making visible through her art the deep connection of place and people. Many of her pieces celebrate the place and the people and that beautiful connection. She and I got talking one time in a car conversation, a long conversation, about that very gift of seeing people and lifting that up so that they can celebrate their own lives. And she did that through art. I did that through the church's Center for Land and People, where we were lifting up during the farm crisis the beauty and vocation of farmers. And we would get them together and network them. So we had a great conversation about that. And so that's a lot of what I have experienced Joann doing, is lifting up and making visible the grace in the people and in the place where they live. And she did that in our community in the Midwest. She did that when she studied in Europe. She did that when she was on mission out in Montana. And she did that back in Milwaukee, noticing the cultures of the neighborhoods and wanting to connect those people. So it's just a particular gift that Joann has, and I think we will probably experience that as she goes through her wonderful talk this morning. So I just want to mention that again. She celebrated wherever and with whomever she was. She honored the extraordinary in the ordinary, and she made visible the wonder of life, grounded, alive, and holy. So we're grateful to you, Joann, for offering to do something for 3 hours. Joann was one of the founding members of DIA, so we've been celebrating her art for a long time, and we're really glad that you are our keynoter today. Thank you.
Thank you. I am indeed honored to be here, and I'm looking straight at Joella. And I want to thank her especially, because I don't think we would be here today if Joella wasn't at the meeting that got this all started. And creative minds tend to like to wander here and here. And Joella kept us on track during a very difficult time of organizing something that we didn't quite know what we were organizing, but we knew it was needed and it would happen. So I would like to give a big clap to Joella. And to Adrian, because when you're just here and we met here and we were talking, we need what, how, what, and she said, okay, and I think you were private of the place then, right? So that also made it even more possible. So I wanted to say that first. And Miriam, you said exactly what we're going to be talking about today. And I forgot to bring the book down, but my talk basically is thresholds and milestones. And John O'Donohue, an Irish priest, poet, author, and I think a mystic, talked a lot about thresholds. And the most important threshold was creation, the world began and we were born. Imagine the threshold that we have to, when we enter a threshold, we have to go over it. Then we are in new territory. Is it a barrier or is it a boundary? Those thresholds are key. And in my life, and one of the joys of getting older, and looking at faces that I saw 25 years ago, and it just warms my heart to see that we are connected, and maybe we're not as nimble of foot. And maybe there are certain things that getting old, you wish that I wish I could run like Anita, who somehow has not gotten any older voice or in body. But that threshold is important. It sets us in many directions. When I look the joys of being old is that we have, especially artists, and Miriam said it so well in the introduction. If I were to say that the theme of this meeting today, meeting the needs of the day, or whatever, what is our preaching in times such as these, we couldn't have manufactured these times of upheaval of the earth in many ways. When the planning committee got together and planned the meeting, and the board got together, we didn't know we would have a new president and a new pope. Because when you did the planning, you were in a different world, right? So we are in a time that is always in flux. And who knows what will happen when AI is beginning. I wouldn't have to have worried if I would just say, AI, write me a talk for this meeting. But I'm glad I didn't ask AI, because my type of talk is kind of rambling. It kind of comes and goes, because in reality, time does not exist. It's a human construct that we need to organize the time. But as soon as time is there, it's gone. So we are fixated on time. I'm late, I'm whatever it is. Because this thing that we constructed is governing us. But if we're thinking of thresholds, you go over and you look back and you wonder. Miriam talked about my ending up in Montana. When I crossed that threshold, what other thresholds brought me to that point? I hope we all look back at our thresholds. My threshold opened into a farm in Wisconsin. From there, my threshold took me to Cincinnati. And from Cincinnati, I had many opportunities, and I traveled and I studied. I did all things, many things and opportunities. But when I look at my life, I realized the most important threshold was Cincinnati asking me to go to Anaconda, Montana. It sounded like a great adventure. I was teaching at St. Clair Academy then. And I did not know that that threshold would lead me on a journey that I could not have imagined. And I often thought, if I hadn't entered the Sensenawa, would I, as a person, discovered anaconda? I don't think so. I don't think I would have figured out why Anaconda, Montana should be part of my life. I don't know that. But because I did enter and I did get asked to go to Anaconda, Montana, the most significant threshold was that step to Anaconda, not Florence, not many places. And I remember when I, after living in Anaconda, was going to Italy, people would say, oh my, what a contrast, and assuming that I was looking. But in reality, it's not Florence, it's Montana and a small, poor smelter town. Would that have been an individual choice? But when we're talking about thresholds, we don't know where those thresholds will lead. They're very, very important. And teamed with threshold, I added milestones. And the nice thing about getting older, we look back. We can look back. And most of us are at a point in our lives, but I'm seeing many younger faces, that we have made major changes. One of the thresholds that has changed me is I now live in a community aspect in Muskego with 95 of our other sisters, or maybe more. That is a threshold that the Sensenawa Dominicans needed to make when it became evident that we could no longer be at the mound with the older population. That threshold has changed us all, and we're living with Presbyterians in Muskego. Would I ever have anticipated that in my life? No. But we are always going through new thresholds. And they're important, how we handle our thresholds, because they're direction making and direction changing. But when I think of milestones, as long as we're sorting through our papers and getting ourselves ready for the next threshold, it is good to see what are really the milestones in my life. And I would encourage you to do that. When I looked at my milestones, I thought, certainly growing up on a farm and loving lambs. I always had a little lamb in my arms. The little lamb I liked most turned out to be a great big ram. And we would walk my country school, 9 in the entire school, was just about a mile from our farm. And Lammy, isn't that a nice original name? Lammy would follow me to school. Well, as Lammy got bigger and bigger, his horns got bigger and bigger, but he still was behind me. And this one day, a truck stopped and said, little girl, are you okay? Because Lammy now was a great big ram, and he was behind me. And he said, I said, oh, yes, I'm fine. And that's my pet. So then he drove on. But he was afraid because that great big sheep was following me. But when I look at that threshold of being on the farm and being close to earth, and everything around me smelled farm-like, and another milestone comes into being. How many farm people do we have? Anybody? Okay, we have a few. And you know that pastures, especially if you have sheep, but cows too, they have to go to other pastures when they've eaten up all one pasture. And my dad asked me to go with Queenie, our dog, to the lower pasture, which was a bog land, a marshland, and to bring back the cows for milking. And if you're a farmer, you know cows are milked at the same time every night and morning. But it was such a beautiful day. I was sitting on a bog. Queenie was sitting with me. And we were looking at the sky and looking at the little yellow flowers that we used to pick for my mother. And as soon as we got to the house, she would put them in the, we called them cow slips. I don't know what their real name was, but she'd put them in water, and of course they'd all die. They weren't meant to be picked. But that, and then my dad, we got so intrigued with that, we forgot that we were supposed to bring the cows. I had a job to do. And pretty soon my father came, I always called him Daddy, to get me. And we walked back, and we both were looking at the clouds, and he was seeing things and I was seeing things. When I look back at this milestone, he didn't yell at me. He didn't say, I can't count on you for anything, you're irresponsible, any of that. He joined me in finding pictures in the clouds. If I had been yelled at and told irresponsible, I wouldn't be the person I am today. He taught me it was okay to lose yourself in the clouds and still have your feet on the ground on the way to milk the cows. In retrospect, that was key. That was very important. So the cows in the field were essential in making me who I am today. The next major threshold, and probably the most important, is going to Anaconda, Montana, because it changed me entirely. It wasn't Florence that changed me, but I'm in a world that I had never, ever experienced, and I don't think I would ever have gone if I hadn't been asked to go there by my community. Anaconda, Montana, then, was still smelting copper that was mined in Butte. And it was a poor little town, and before unions were, it was very, very hard time Scrabble town. And that community was surrounded by mountains, and the reason the smelter was in Anaconda, in the process of smelting copper, you need lots of water and you need pine trees. Butte had the ore, but it didn't have water or pine trees. In the smelting process, they throw in, they need lots of water in the process. And then at one point, they put in a big pine tree for oxidation and so on. Butte had the ore, but Anaconda had mountains and trees and water, lakes all over the place. So that process of making copper, and the smelter is now a monument, a national monument. Anaconda, I'm looking at, uh, I forgot your name. Anita, of course, isn't that crazy? A minute. So she was in Montana too, so she can experience the importance of the landscape in your life. And there were many, the beauty of we're in the mountain ranges, but the town was, I think it was a mile long and 8 blocks wide. And it was very, very poor. But the sky and the whole atmosphere of beauty, and there were a lot of painters who loved to paint the trees, the lakes, and so on. I am the only person that looked at the town, the people, and its work. And later on, when I give the word, we'll see the people, its town, and its work. Because as an artist, and I think if we look at ourselves as artists, wherever you are, you're seeing where you are with artist's eyes. We have different antennae. You're attuned to things that other people are. And I think the role of the artist today and in the past is to be planted where you are. You put roots down. You love it. You get involved in the life of that town. And you become one with that town. And you will be changed, and they'll be changed by you. But you have to be committed. And I think rooting is the word to use. Your roots go deep. Anaconda, that was 60 years ago, 50 years ago. Today, the pictures you'll be seeing later, is an exhibit that was put together of the work. I did my master's thesis at Northern Illinois University on Anaconda, using the product of the town, copper and zinc. I made etchings on copper and zinc. All hard, messy, long work. You need a studio with lots of equipment. And that, you will be seeing pictures of the life of the town. And that life, 3 years ago, in 2023, the things that you'll be seeing, that exhibit was put together and traveled for 1 year through the state of Montana. And you know Montana is a long state. And it now resides, but you'll be seeing that. And why am I talking about that? It represents that an artist in a community makes a difference if they are really planted and use the gifts that they have. The thing about Anaconda, and Anita will attest to this, is it brings out a part of you. I like to say I was born in Wisconsin, but I grew up in Montana. I went there to teach. I taught. I had some of the best students I ever had. And my 8th graders, we decided there were 4 seniors, that were just exceptional. And we started an after-school program for adults. Smeltermen. the Methodist minister's wife across the street, a whole collection of people. And the students would help me with the class. And one would be in charge of printmaking, and another would be in drawing, another sculpture, and I would go around and one man from the smelter's job was to sit and wait for something to break down and then push a button. Not exactly a life-giving job. So he started whittling, and he told me once that most of the people who had a similar job read smutty books. And I was at the art center. Well, I didn't even tell you about that. We started an art center. He brought me his wood carvings of birds to the art center when I was up there. And he said, I thought you would like to see these. They were exquisite little birds. And he said, this is what I do while I'm waiting. And my heart almost broke because he was a true artist. He needed to do things with his hands, and he needed to be acknowledged. And he was being laughed at because he was doing that. So when you're a part of a community, and so we had the art class, we had a whole group, a collection of people, and I was trying to get the students. Montana had few galleries, and we raised money, and the eighth graders, or the seniors, I keep calling them eighth graders, seniors, we took a trip to visit some galleries in Bozeman and areas. And so at a certain point, they were beginning to say, is there a way we could have something here? What about doing something like this here? And at the same time, I became aware that there was a state arts council that gave grants, and so we started to know. And then more people were thinking, and then there was an empty Salvation Army church building. And maybe something could happen there. Something was happening. But every 3 years, there's a strike. When the contracts would come up, there would be a strike. One strike lasted 9 months. That meant nobody had a job. It was a one industry town. So nothing. And believe it or not, we started an art center in the middle of a strike. And it's still going today, 55 years later. It's moved to a larger facility. The city courthouse moved to a different facility. It left a great big building, and so they went. I made an etching of the moving to the new building, but I was living in Milwaukee. But this was happening after I'd left. I'm spending a lot of time talking about that because I think the role of the artist, besides making their own art, because the nature of the artist is to see things in a different way and see possibilities. Looking at an empty building that the Salvation Army gave up on would not be, probably, you think, why bother with? But we have a role in the broader community because our eyes are important and we can see possibilities. And of course, it was a strike. We didn't have any money. And I was teaching, and at noon, I would volunteer to talk at any place that wanted talking about this thing that we're going to do. And they said, what? And I said, well, we'll need to do some things. And pretty soon,
But the unfolding, if somebody has hope in a town that's always seeing nothing's going to happen, nothing ever good happens in this town, is the attitude. Pretty soon, hope spreads, and other people get hope as well. So I've had cows and clouds, and in Montana, little did I know, not only I knew how to make art, I knew how to organize people. And our little town got noticed by the State Arts Council, and the Catholic schools closed. And I got a call from the State Arts Council director and said, we feel very sorry that the Catholic schools closed in Anaconda, but now we'd like you to work with us. And I said, well, you know, we have started this art center and I'm running the art center. And he said, oh, I know that. But you're used to doing two things at one time. You taught and ran, so now you could do this. And I said, well, what do I do? And they, now talk about this for a good job description. We don't know. All we know is we want you. We want you there because you've proven that when you're there, something happens. Okay, that was basic. And we also know that most of Montana is made up of small towns. And we don't know anything about those small towns. And we want you to find out something about those small towns and let us know if they're interested in the arts, and then we can figure out how we could help them. And I said, well, how do I do this? And they said, we'll give you a car and you drive to those places. And you'll figure it out. So that's a pretty good job description. And of course, Montana is a very big state. And I was still directing the Art Center. And I drove 100,000 miles in the state of Montana, visiting 100 towns in about a 6-year period. And it was an exciting time because that there was so much. And in some of the farthest out of the way places, music was essential. I have a glass of water. I'm getting a little thirsty. So music and traveling theater. A lot of people wanted traveling theater. And they were hungry for possibilities. So I would report back to the Arts Council, and the director said, I have a list of things that they can, come to the town, but you don't present them until there's a need or whatever. But I said, they would like to bring in some theater, especially, but what if they fail and they can't pay the bill? And the director of the Arts Council said, well, that's simple. We'll create a courage fund. Thank you. You could just sit right. Oh, okay, yeah. I thought that was genius. He said, tell them to say yes. And work there, get out and try to get as many people to attend as possible. And then if they don't make it, we'll take care of the rest. But say yes. No one ever needed the fund. It was a genius plan. In fact, one person, just knowing that if they didn't make it, it would be taken care of, gave them the courage to say yes. And in fact, the first person called the Arts Council, the first little town, I think it was Utica, said, we did such a good job. We paid all of our bills and we made a little profit. So we're going to send you a little money to give courage to the next people who give courage. Now that is what I think is worth talking about, because sometimes money is not the issue, it's the courage that's needed. So when I would visit these towns, I would say, you know, I can give a talk, I can go to your schools, I could demonstrate art, whatever you want. I never, you know, took my prints to try to have shows. I never wanted anyone to think that I was promoting my art. It was some of these towns are so out of the way, no person ever visits, and I would stay with a family, and then the one thing required would be to have a meeting and take an existing meeting that somebody has, and then let them invite anyone to come, make it an open thing for my talk. And it was amazing what happened. And I described what I did was a full-time town gossip and a guest. Because I would say, somebody would say, it would be really great if we could have a dance. Our girls came back with a first in what? In school when cheerleading. And if we could have a dance group, you know, if they had some dance to help them. And I said, well, here's a phone number. It's called Dance Montana. Just make a call. So she ran off and made a call, and she came running in. She said, Dance Montana, they're going to come and talk to us about it right now. I mean, we're going to do it next week. And so it was that kind of thing. There are resources, but you don't just say, here's a list, and you ask. You have to, so connecting people with what was there, but they didn't know it was there. I will have to move along, but you're getting the idea that there are many ways of helping one another. And so when we start with the slides, there are strange things that this Montana keeps coming back in my life. Not only were these pictures that you'll be seeing traveling the state and now are distributed and living in the state, the amazing thing is there are people today in Montana who are carrying on things in the same way or in a different way. And we will look at those now, I think. We'll look at, oh, I know, I see the picture of me here. Okay, before we see the pictures, there's a very young me. The day before I was to come, a third grader I taught at St. Vincent Fair in River Forest, Illinois, and we have kind of communicated as adults. He was roaming through YouTube and came upon this film just the day before I was to come. So I said, can we show this? And there I am. It was an interview I gave for Butte, Montana television. And it really tells, I'm being interviewed in my studio then, in the basement of, big old convents had big old basements. And my studio was in the furnace room. And this will show how we made an etching, and then it will show, but it was such a discovery the day before. And I think, what's happening here? There are strange things that are saying, I meant to be doing this at this particular time or something. So we'll take a little time for that and then we'll continue. I'll sit down. Yeah, okay.
So I think what we'll do is we'll watch the video, and then it'll be perfect time for a break.
Okay, very
and then
good.
we'll come back.
Okay.
So I'll get this video queued up, and we'll watch the video. And it's the perfect time for our break, and then we'll continue after that. Okay? So give me just a second. Your water? Yeah. There you go. I would, yeah.
The beginning part.
I don't have any sound.
No, the first part doesn't have sound, but it shows how an etching is made.
No, I should.
No, this one has
Oh, there's no sound?
The first part doesn't have
Okay, sorry. I'm going to start it over then.
shows the etching.
Okay. The IT guy always panics.
Okay, we skip that.
Okay.
We don't need it, but the way you have it, you have it. I think this got it. The window, the stained glass maker, can you hear me? The stained glass window, the rising sun, a priest had a glass studio. I designed the window, and it was above the doorway. And then at 3:00, when school was out, this one little boy used to come in to the gallery and sit down and bathe in the light of the window. This is showing how I used to give workshops in the basement of the convent. And this nun was visiting, she was visiting relatives, and she came down to do her laundry. And I was doing this workshop, and I said, you can do laundry any day, but you can't do an etching any day, so you come in here. And so she came in, and I gave her a smock, and she made an etching. She was a biology teacher, and she made the most beautiful biological kind of image. And the plate is being now etched in acid outside. And you don't want fumes in there. I should have described that. What we were working before is drawing in with a steel needle, drawing into a plate that now is being etched. Now we're doing the wiping. It's a very busy activity. And all of the etchings you'll be seeing were done like this. That's why I'm showing it. But they were done in Illinois, the ones that you'll see when I was studying for my master's. And the whole master's show was on Anaconda. And this is looking at the inks, rolling the ink on the plate. It's messy. And someone is working on their plate over there, drawing on it. And this,
I'm showing how to wipe the plate. You have to ink up the plate, and then you have to get the ink off the plate without pulling it out of the etched lines. I had a nun aunt who made me smocks, Sister Emelding. And here's an image of a skier. I think that's, she's printing. This is a demonstration. I'm showing how to do it. And the television was there taping this, and they had it on Butte TV. And then you have to get the edges very clean because they will print too, so. And it's important to have, you know, when you're rubbing to get the ink off, you can put pressure, but at the end, you're just trying to shine up, get the greasy film off. Then they have to, they're being blotted now, the papers, we're getting the paper. 100% rag content is used. Then the paper is put on, and it's a roller underneath, a roller on top, like the old-fashioned washers. And it's now pushing the paper into the plate. And you pick up, this is pure magic, I always tell people. That's the print, and then the plate. And it comes backwards, comes off backwards. So you have to, if you are using words, you have to write them backward on the plate. Capital letters always work better because tails go in wrong directions. That's Rosemary Conway for the Cincinnati Dominicans. And she made many, she came 2 summers and worked in the studio. And then I had a high school student, graduate. I was working with the Arts Council and was working on some grant writing. Well, now the interview is starting.
Art has always had an important part. As long as I can remember, I've always drawn. And then when I finally had a chance to get involved in art, I chose the printing process. And as a practicing artist, it has become important to work on prints, to develop, to see how ideas change. And that becomes a very, very exciting and important thing. I think probably art, more than any other field, you're able to relate inner experiences and ideas in a visual form. And that also helps you get a perspective on what your life is about. And I think that through the printing process, which is different than the other art forms, you work with the plate and you develop and you evolve. You're working with nitric acid eating into the plate, and your ideas come, and one idea will be suggested by another, and you're actually having a dialogue with the nitric acid in the plate. And there's so many things that can happen to the plate that as you're going along, it becomes very, very exciting. Starting my 8th year in Montana, and during that time have taught high school at Central High School and worked at directing Copper Village Museum and Art Center when it first began, and then kind of spun off into the larger community of Montana. And I think that the openness and how things have evolved as needs present themselves is a pretty exciting thing.
I understand that what you're doing now is going to smaller communities and helping people develop their dreams. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, one of my favorite topics. I'm a farm girl from Wisconsin, and I've always treasured my experience of living in the rural community. And when the schools closed in Anaconda, the Montana Arts Council asked if I would work with them, visiting small towns in Montana, basically getting to know the towns. And most of Montana is made up of small towns. And I feel very privileged to have an opportunity to go into towns that most people go through on their way to someplace else. And one thing I do in the community is try to get to know the town and basically help a community dream for its future. What kind of community would you like this to be? What are your resources? What kind of things make you happy? What kind of things will help this to be a better life? And we don't have an opportunity to do that very much. We're so busy living our daily life, that isn't a pun, that we forget that part of this daily living has to be dreaming. And I've been accused of being a dreamer. And I don't think that's such a bad thing, because I've seen dreams actualized. And the problem is sometimes trying to coincide your dreams with other people's dreams. And sometimes people's dreams can be other people's nightmares. You have to figure out how that's going to work. But I'm finding great resources in Montana towns and great hope. I'm really excited about Montana. And when a little town like Fishtail, population 50, and Absaroka and Jordan and Hobson and Utica, all these towns that I visited, have things happening and people wanting things to happen to themselves. And I think without pressuring people at all or programming people, when you start asking people to dream, the arts play an important part, because we're getting to the basic things that are important to people.
How are your interests, your art interests fit into your religious community?
Well, on a local level, it's been really very exciting. I live with other nuns here in the house, and they have been most encouraging and most understanding about this art life down in the basement studio that's so different from what most people know about. And I find that this is just really very exciting to have the support from the people I live with and the encouragement of my life as an artist and how this would fit in. I think it's very basic in our community. The arts have always played an important part in our life. And I do have a special gift and a special talent, and my community has always encouraged and helped me in that. And I think how lucky I am to have a studio, have the opportunity to have time now and then to print and to develop as an artist. And I think as I develop as an artist, I develop as a person and as a religious too. I find it all fitting together very beautifully.
I think it was meant that the day before I came, I hadn't seen this in 50 years. So now I think it's break time. Any questions about anything so far?
Yeah. That's amazing.
The prints that I did for my master's show, done 50 years ago, a woman who I knew in Montana, and she was a professional curator and had been around the country, and she was in Helena and on her way to Wisconsin, and she was working in the archives, and she was cleaning out stuff that didn't belong there. And she said most of the art here is really awful stuff that's
Cosmic Conqueror.
is
What the hell does
supposed
that
to be contemporary art, and that really it's artists painting like what the West was.
Which means
There's nothing contemporary about that. And she said, I'm on my way to Wisconsin, and I am convinced that the most important Montana artists we have is you, and I'm coming to Wisconsin, and you get all of your Anaconda plates out and the collages after I'm backing up a little bit. And so I went to Italy after Montana, And then after the Italy time, I went back to Montana for 3 years, and I did a whole series of things called Anaconda Reclaimed. When I left Anaconda, the smoke was still coming out of the smokestack, meaning they were still smelting copper. When I came back, there was no smoke. And the first print, I did a new etching, and I had a friend take me down the Deer Lodge Road, and where you see the smokestack. And I wanted to do it in stages, like a film strip. You know, you're coming closer and closer and closer. So she would stop, and then I would make I think I took pictures. So and then I made this print, and I don't think, no, it isn't in this section, and had an exhibit called Anaconda Reclaimed, where I took some of the images from Italy and combined them with Montana, because in my world they belong together. And then I did a series of collages on Anaconda Reclaimed. You know, claiming is a mining term. And I had the smelterman from one of the prints you show is, you'll see, is a smelterman standing on a copper plate. And I cut him out, and he's standing on just white background, and I write on the bottom, the bus no longer stops here. And then I have him turned on his side, and in Montana, he looks like a mountain. I gave him, he had a big stomach, turned on his side. And so the whole series was Anaconda is different now. And so when I had a show of this whole thing, Anaconda Reclaimed, they were okay with how I had shown the differences in the smelter and in the smelterman and the landscape but they did not like that film strip. And I said, why? What's wrong with the film strip? I've done some really kind of strange things over here that seem like I'm not too positive of what's happened, or maybe you're not too positive, but they said, there's no smoke in the stack. And I said, but there isn't. But it wasn't in their mind. I did something wrong in showing it. And that's the role of the artist too. Make you see what you don't want to see. And I think that's a very important role, especially today, with what's happening with our government and every aspect of the funding. And artists have to start saying and showing what is happening. And I see another thing in disaster. What is the thing that often happens when COVID happened? I remember the first chair violinist of the New York Symphony got out of her window and sat on the roof and played. And I remember in Milwaukee, there were so many murders on a night in Milwaukee. And there was a little group of jazz musicians, this was in the paper, that they would gather on Saturday and just jam. And one night they were just saying, one Saturday, this murder in Milwaukee has to stop. What's going on? What can we do? And they said, let's go to the site of a murder and have our Saturday night play there and reclaim that space for something good. Now, isn't that significant? That is the power that the arts have that nobody else has the courage to say. And often it's done where you have to notice, especially if it's something. But you don't have to be a major, important artist. In Anaconda, I was able to be that agent to let people see what they don't want to see, but it's there. But also, I was able to let them see their poor little town as something worth seeing. And in my world, everything is worth seeing. And the artists have the ability, you bring it out and it comes out in another form. And that is a role that is very important in any age. And as we are getting older, I think we find ways of how we can do that. But it's important. And in Montana, I like to say I grew up in Montana in a real sense. I discovered I had all sorts of gifts that if I hadn't crossed that particular threshold, I don't know what I would have been. But I'm so glad I did cross the threshold and didn't say, oh, I don't think so, that's too far away. We don't know what's on the other end. And we don't know where it's going to go and how many other thresholds came into being because of that. But the amazing thing is 50 years later, the prints that this, I hope you like them, I'm giving such a build-up, when you get to see them, that they toured the state for the year of 2003. And when I was there, because the state was so big, the other galleries and we met in the convent, all the gallery directors, including university, and the Montana Arts Council had said that there were so many good shows from the Northwest major galleries and universities that they had in collections, that the state would pay for transportation. They would put together traveling exhibits of major art from the Western states museums. And so the state would pay, the Arts Council would pay to get them in the state. And then the galleries would set up a traveler schedule. The likelihood of someone from Billings coming to Anaconda to see the exhibit would not be. But it's so big, you could make a nice say. In order to do that, we needed to have an organization. So I said, well, come to the convent. We got a big dining room table. So we had university, and we had the galleries, and we decided we'd start an organization, Montana Art Gallery Directors Association. I was the first president, and we called her Magda, our girl Magda.
Joanne, I'm going to have to,
Yeah,
I think it's probably time we should take a quick break. No worries. So it's 10:36. Be back here by 11 a.m. Coffee and water is outside. Snacks are in the back, and there's a couple sodas if you feel like an early soda. But the main part is the coffee and the tea are outside. Okay? 11 o'clock, be back here for the prizes. Thank you, everybody.
It was a
All right, we have to be out by noon, so I will start. Where's my clicker guy? The next things we're going to be seeing are a series of etchings and collages that went with the Prince touring the state. And the first one you're seeing, I won't give a lot of detail. Okay. This is one that I was traveling with my friends. Okay. Basically a collage of, I spent, when I drove 100,000 miles, I didn't have time to draw, and at one point I sat down and did a whole series of etchings where the composition of the car was the way I saw. This is a collage of people from other prints, and I just put them inside. They were traveling with me. Okay, now click. We'll go fast. I'm not going to read that. It tells about who I am. But you already learned that through the third grader who sent me that. Okay, click, get rid of it. We have to go fast. This is a series of etchings in aquatint with Sister Joann's master's thesis. This was my master's thesis show. Yeah. Okay, go on. Oh, here, I can look here. Yeah, okay. There's a series, I did the churches, next, click. Churches of Anaconda. Click, come on, next one. The bars, after I did the churches, people said you should do the real church in town. And so the thing with churches, they had nice spires that broke up the composition. The bars were all flat, but they had big signs, so I made the signs bigger. So they would look, okay, next, I'm moving along. And then the houses of Anna. And that was the street across from the convent. Again, I'm saying I'm looking at the town, its people, and it's looking with eyes of love. Everything is deserved to be seen, not just the mountains. Okay, go on, click. And this one, I lugged up a piece of zinc up on top of the cemetery, the hill. And with etching, you have to do things in reserve. I had the ground on the plate, and I sat there in the cemetery looking down at the town and drew it, enough sketches so I could go back to the studio and work on it. But since I did it on the zinc plate, it's in reverse. So when I showed it to the people in Anaconda, they said, "Where were you?" It's backwards. So the people that were supposed to, I did it for, didn't recognize their town because the smokestack was on the wrong side. Okay, connect, okay. This has been a symbol of Anaconda. I have this in my apartment. It's the town, the smokestack, the hill, the courthouse, some houses, and then the town, the big hotel that was built for the Anaconda Company's annual meeting when it was the Copper King town, is in front. And I have Marcus Daly, was not related to me, but he was the one that discovered low copper ore as no gold, but this would make them rich. And I have him standing on a slab of copper. And everyone wants this. And someone who visited my apartment said, "I would like to buy one of those." I said, there no more exist. Okay, go on. And this is without the green ink. All right, continue. And here are the plates that go with that. And see how they're in reverse. All right, this is all the colors, and this is the green, just the green. And the process used for printing all the colors at once is viscosity. You print all the colors at one time according to levels of viscosity. Okay, go on. It's such an involved process, I can't. And as far as I know, nobody has ever done a print of the changing of the shift. I got permission to go, and all the men were coming out. I was going to draw, but they came so fast. But I took a picture, and the position and the etching really captures the moment. All right, next. And these are two of the machines used, the Calder and the, I don't know, that's the one that a full tree goes into. There's a third one, but this one only has two. Okay, go on. And this is a copper etching, and this traveled with the show. And the Marcus Hotel, it was called the Daley Hotel, the Marcus Daley Hotel, because he was, when the miners came to look for precious metal, he was the one that said, we're not going to find any precious metal, but there's a fortune in low-grade copper. And, so much need for that. And they built this beautiful hotel, and it was the Daley Hotel. And I made Daley, who's back here, in his hotel. And this was one of the lamps. When I left, the hotel basically was closed and was being dismantled, and they lopped off the top floor. And a bar in Seattle bought most of the Tammany bar, was the elegant bar that had original etchings and all of this fancy stuff. It's now living in Seattle, or at least it went there. Okay, next. I won't. For 5 years, Daley crossed across the state. This is my traveling years, 1,000 miles, all right? And this one, the Princeton windshield show, I traveled with my friends. And always, I had the front view, this one doesn't show it, but other ones, where I'm going. And the side view mirror always had the smokestack. So it always remembered where I came from. Okay, go on. And these are collages of some of the towns I met along the way. And this was a gas station. And so then I use collage things all around the edge. Okay, and it's called Voyaging Visions. That was the name of that one. Next. And this is Oasis. After driving miles and miles and miles, you're lucky to find an oasis that has a gas station. And again, do you see the smokestack? But I couldn't get it. Oh, here it is. This is where I have the smokestack. Okay. And then on the High Line, that's where the High Line, and you can see a grain elevator. All right, go on. And this one, full zinc, a full sheet of zinc. Montana tapestry. And in this one, and it has lots of words, which means they have to be made backwards. And so this shows all of the arts that was going on. And the man that you see, he was the Montana director. So I put him in there. And here I put myself in the rearview mirror. And that took hours and hours. You cover the plate with tar, and then with a steel needle, you draw through the tar. And so then you put it in nitric acid, like you saw in the picture, and the acid will eat the metal, but not the tar. Okay, next. Here's another one in that series. Same full sheet, Montana tapestry.
And this one shows the places I visited. And I don't know if I have all the names in there, but I have somebody with a violin and the places. Okay. Hours and hours of work. But I was still working at something else at that particular time. So this took a long time. All right. And this one, we live on the edge of the miraculous. It looks like the one you just saw, but do you see anything that's different? That there's an angel sitting, a cherub with a bare bottom. We live on the edge of the miraculous. And I think most of the time I felt I was in a world of miracles, okay? And this was after I came back and the smoke was no longer in the stack. And I call this, well, folks, this is the last stop on the tour. Okay? And then a bank sponsored the show, and this was a sign. A series of etchings and collages depicts the physical and cultural changes that took place after the smelter closed. Daley returned from Italy in 1985 to find Anaconda transformed its iconic stack, no longer breathing smoke. She used bits and pieces from the Anaconda and Italian prints to assemble collages that mirror the community's shock, despair, hope, and resilience. All right, next. And this is the one I talked to you about, the strip that caused lots of heartache. They didn't want to see the stack without smoke. But I called it coming home because we went out and then we got closer and closer and closer. No, it's the other way around. All right, coming home. No, that's right. Yeah. Okay, next. And here's a collage. Buon Tornata, Joanne. Now this is putting together, it's welcome in Italian, and different elements of Anaconda is welcoming my car. All right. This was a view from my bedroom window out the door, a crayon drawing. All right, next. And this is, again, from that series, The Bus No Longer Stops Here. And it's pretty stark. You recognize the smelterman, don't you? And he's on a cloud, okay? And you saw that in another picture, New World. Everybody out, this is the end of the line. All right, next. We can make it. This is Daley turned on his side with the town and the courthouse on him. But I choose to say, that's the spirit. That's the feeling I got when I was in town. People were hurting because the things had changed. And then my response is, we can make it, okay? And then here I wrote a little poem. Here, a character from Marcus Daly Hotel that you saw. He's looking at the town. I can't remember. Maybe I can read this. I can't. It's called Turtle Tame Time. Okay? And while the giant sleeps. And the element of the laurel leaves, that's a symbol of empire, isn't it? And this I used assimilation of what would be laurel. And it's not empire, but it's the death. Marcus Daly is no longer there, and the smokestack is empty. And up here is a coin of the hotel. And I have a coin. At one time, when copper was king, actually our sisters went there in 1903, and at that time they were still using copper coins as currency. So if you went grocery shopping, you had to take a bucket full of heavy coins to pay. And that is playback to one industry town. You could do it because everything was Anaconda Copper. Anaconda Copper owned not only the whole souls to the company store, but everything, including the park, was company doctor too. Everything was company. All right. This is Anaconda from 69 to 73. Montana miles, that's when I was traveling. Okay, continue. Next. I'm speeding up because okay. Okay, click. Yeah, click. Oh, that's the last one? Oh, I went very fast. Okay, can we look at, do you have any questions about the concept for this or any about the Anaconda era at all? Yes, back. Okay. Okay, okay.
And you want to eventually show the two images, correct?
Yes, yes.
I'll work on that
Which
while we're
would
doing
be
the Q&A.
me on the ladder and Our Lady of Guadalupe. It's the Guadalupe.
Hello?
Yeah.
Is it on?
Yes.
Okay.
Gabby had a question.
Oh, Gabby.
I was intrigued when you said this is tapestry, so I was wondering what you referred as actual.
I called it Anaconda Tapestry because of every little inch is filled with things, and all of the images are woven together as a tapestry in my mind. So in a sense, it's my mind that is taken in all of these things and become a tapestry. And so I had two of them, one the people and then one the landscape. And one of these, I'm not sure which one, was part of this traveling exhibit. And the interesting thing, since we have a little time, I ramble too much. But that is the Anaconda part of my life, but it still continues because this show that you just saw is in 2003. It went 23. Went to the littlest towns, but the year before, I went back to Montana. A former student of mine had a press, and we got the plates, and shipping plates were, somebody was going to Anaconda and I gave them a plate, but they took those so we could print some prints. And so in her studio, we printed up 3 sets of all of these prints. It was an awful lot of work. And then Susan, who curated this whole thing, I left them with my friend that we printed with. And then later, the frames, they were put together for this exhibit that toured the state. And the Gallery Directors Association got together first, and we put out the tour, figured out the tour, and then it ended up in Bozeman. And I just said I didn't want anything back, so all of those prints are in different galleries, and the Missoula Museum of Art is the major holder of those works. So, okay, now the next image. Oh, another question. Okay.
You probably already stated this, but what was the man standing there? What was he supposed to represent? There's a big fellow.
That the bus doesn't stop here. That man was the smelterman that was on the plate. Is that the one?
It's not a man.
Yeah.
It is.
Oh,
Yeah.
A smelter
Yeah.
man.
That's. Oh no, that one. Is it that one?
Is it?
that one.
Oh, okay. That was a man from the hotel, and his arm was on a counter. And it's just, he's looking at the town that is no longer the same either. So I have a poem that it's called Turtle Tame Time. That time has stopped, turtle, and we're remembering that moment. Okay, we just have a little time to make an announcement. Well, okay, I just.
Let me get your images
Okay,
for
yeah,
you. Give
yeah.
me just a second. You want them side by side if we
Side
can?
by side, yeah.
Okay, let's see if we can pull that off. You know, John and I were just in Missoula, and if we had known, yeah.
Okay,
Whoops.
side by side.
Works?
Yes.
Okay, all yours.
Now, we talked about, 50 years is a long time ago. The person on the ladder is me. We were asked, Kathleen Broderick was one of our sisters. She shortly, a couple of years after this, left the community, and recently, I think it was 4 years ago, died. But the two of us were asked to make a mosaic of a Lady of Guadalupe at Endeavor, a migrant workers camp, that our sisters for years and years taught religion and reading and writing and the regular classes to the children of migrant workers who were picking lettuce in truck farms. In Wisconsin, close to Portage, if you know Wisconsin. And there were no lights, so sunrise to sunset. We had 1 month before we had to go back to teaching school. And the mosaic, we had the year before, everybody was saving us Italian ceramic tile and broken glass, and we lugged buckets of stuff to the site, but we just had 1 month before we had to go back to school and for teaching. And we could only use daylight. There was a 3-foot stand that we were on, and we asked if we could take off our stiff veils at least. We couldn't. We pinned them back. Now, can you imagine climbing ladders? That's me on the ladder. And you had to put the cement first, and then you put the pieces. Then you had to get that, rub that off, and then place the grout on. Then you had to get that. And you had to get it off. And now we had this nice little pocket to collect stuff in the back of our veils. And then you had to hose it down. Oh, yes, sweat is right. And you can see from the bottom of our white habit how nice and clean this is, because all the stuff comes down. And then at noon, there was mass for the children and the teachers, the sisters. So we would climb down, we would put on our black mantles, and we would slosh our way into church. You could hear us coming in, slosh, slosh, slosh. and dirty up to our knees, and our fingers looked like, I mean, if I wanted to commit a crime, it was the time to do it. No fingerprints. We tried using gloves, but you couldn't feel, so we just pull the stuff off. So that is making the shrine, 1964. Calculate. 3 years ago, I got a phone call from someone that said, we tracked you down, we hear that you're the artist. And then Lucan, Kathleen, was still living in Ohio. And they brought her out, and we got together to see the shrine. And everything it was a wonderful time. But I said to the woman, that's 60-some years ago. And she said, yes, there's a great devotion to Our Lady of Guadalupe, and we want to continue, and we wanted you to know. Now, on the 31st, next week, there's a reopening of the shrine. I'm going to give a talk about the making of the shrine, and the thing is, we came up with a whole category of colors: beer bottle brown, whiskey bottle brown, magnesia blue, Noxzema blue. It had to be glass or tile. Whiskey was really good. I mean, it was a nice clear, and then Lucan's mother, the Dells. Some of you may have heard of the Dells. The great big, lots of rides and things to do there. They lived in the Dells, and her mother would come every day and see if there's anything the girls needed. And we needed some red glass. And so she said she would try to find red glass. She was amber when we needed amber, and she was the wife of the only doctor in the town, and she really was quite elegant to look at. But her assignment was to find us red glass, and at the dark of night, she went to garbage, the the abandoned cars behind a big fence. She would go junk, and she went looking for cars before 1950. And when she found a tail light, she broke it, because after 50 they became plastic. So she was in charge of breaking taillights, and I kept thinking that would make a great article in the paper. Mrs. Broderick spotted breaking taillights late at night. The great headline. But so we had this whole category of colors, and someone said, make sure in your talks you give your lesson about colors. And but again, I'm absolutely amazed that 64 years later, it's still going. And an underwriter, he's hoping he doesn't have to pay for it, but gave $1 million for this project so they could get it ready. It's now a park. It has steps and a rail, landscaping, flowers, and it's going to be a major attraction except there's no parking, and it's on a hill, but so I on the 31st, the morning of the day before, the woman who was responsible for getting this started is coming. She's going to pick me up and take me to her house with her mother, and we're going to go to the opening, which is 6 o'clock on the 31st. And so we're just going to have a little celebration. And for the Cincinnati Dominicans, Mary Evans and I were trying to figure out maybe we could get a bus to go. And the more we talked with the woman, she said, it's only for really able walkers because it's on a hill. There's no parking. A bus could not manage. A little van couldn't manage. And so we decided that was totally unfeasible. And besides, there were no bathrooms. There was one bathroom, and getting people there, and but people will go on their own and find out. But it will be beautiful. But it's my yes.
Where did you use the roses? I mean, the red. I don't see anything.
Well, close up, broken up in it's part of a whole pattern. The red glass, and this isn't. Now this picture I had, it was a catalog, Queen of the America Guild. There's a whole guild, and this was, someone sent it to me, an annual meeting of the people who have great devotion to Our Lady of Guadalupe. And those in Wisconsin know that Cardinal Bishop Burke had his in where? Tell me. La Crosse. And it really became a monument to himself, $1 million shrine, but there were no migrants or anything connected. The authentic place to have Our Lady of Guadalupe, and we feel that this will be the major Guadalupe shrine in Wisconsin, and will be marketed in that way. But to be part of that, and to be in this mystery of 64 years later, you plant seeds, you have no idea where they land or who's going to harvest them. But to be able to be part of seeing that, when I got the call, I kept saying, that was 64 years ago. Do you realize that? 64 years ago. Are you out of your mind? And she said, no. But they renovated everything. There is a chapel, and there is a meeting space that was used for the meals for the migrants who are there. And then a little area, but still only one bathroom.
Is this outside?
It's outside. And the grotto was there. Someone built the grotto. And 3 years ago, when I got the first phone call, the grotto needed to be shored up. It was not in good shape. The mosaic was pretty good shape. And the man that's doing the underwriting did write a check for $30,000 for that first project to get the building safe. And that cost that much to do that. And now, but the mosaic, the shrine lasted, I mean, we didn't know too much about it, but what we did must have been right. Wisconsin winters and summers, it went through the seasons.
It was outdoors.
It's still outdoors.
And what is the measurement of it? How
Big.
tall?
Big.
From this ceiling to this floor?
The shrine itself, there's a table. They're hoping anniversaries and weddings and gatherings. There are benches. The size. Oh, it's taller than I am. I mean, the mosaic itself is about, I would say, 8 feet. It's a big structure. Yeah.
And both ways.
Both this
The height and width of it.
the height and the width. Oh, it's big. I would say maybe 12 feet long and 16 feet high. And there, the woman in charge is worried about security. We can, kids finding a nice place to be because there is no gates. There are lights. She said when you see the lights on the mosaic, it's just beautiful. But to be part of something that continues is just a mystery, and it's a wonderful, and the devotion, there's real devotion, that this was a project of people who said, this is our project, this is our Virgin Mary. And so I have to work on that talk. But that's in a week.
It's also a testament to great art and great artists' work that endures, because our work is going to live beyond us. And everybody who's in other professions cannot say that. How many things have we seen that just go out of fashion and that we don't even know about them anymore? But great art continues. And that's a legacy, right?
And I think it would be worthwhile for each of us. One of the questions I had.
The two of you learned mosaic art from Sister Guala?
We had a little bit. We helped a little with that, the science building mosaic, a little bit with that. So we knew basic things. Yeah, we were students at Rosary together. But when we cross that threshold, we don't know where it's going to lead us, and we don't. And for me, the amazement that 64 years ago, we just responded to our superiors saying, go do this. And I said, okay. Like David Nelson at the Montana Arts Council said, go visit Montana. How do I do this? We don't know. You do it.
In
Yes.
the second photo, the children there, were they involved in assembling the mosaic, or were they just
anyone
admiring?
That came, they were being taught. They would come up. And anybody that came up to the mosaic, we gave them a tile to put in. And it's fun. When I was there recently, and however the word got around, there were several people that came to see me. And one boy who was high school age or older, and his mother came, and they saw it in the paper that this was being done, and it was a newspaper article with a picture, and the boy showed it to me, and he said, I was the little boy. He was the model for the little boy. And his mother said, I can't believe that this is all happening. And so there's a direct effect with people's lives that make a difference. And I think maybe it's a symbol that today there's great need to have the same love of the Virgin Mary to watch over us now, or whatever. But there's a reason. And I think in both of these experiences that I shared with you, that I'm part of a bigger something that I don't know about. But whatever it is, it's for good.
Any other questions?
Or anyone who want to say they have another question.
Joann, were you just about to ask us, did you have a reflection question for us?
Yes, did you have what reflection question, or you've experienced a similar thing in your life? Where you did something years ago and somehow it's